Now, wherever I turn, I hear about low carbon transition. The European Union has very ambitious goals. COP26 has just finished. And even though commitments perhaps are not yet where they should be, I think there is a real policy momentum. And I am personally convinced that very soon green credentials will become a key determinant of competitive advantage of firms, and access to green tech energy will become a determinant of revealed comparative advantage of countries. So, but the big question is, how will countries get there? How will countries and firms adjust to the low carbon future? So in my presentation, I will argue that foreign direct investment can play a role in that process, and that countries can use investment promotion policies to shape their trade structure, the composition of their trade, and in this way to stimulate adjustment to low carbon future. Now, I mentioned the future will be green, but we are not there yet. And the first question that's on my mind, particularly in my job, is what holds back green investment in emerging markets? Now, in 2018, EBRD surveyed almost 20,000 of firms in emerging markets. And we asked firms, if you have not invested in improving your energy efficiency, why is that? And we were absolutely shocked by the answer. 60% of firms, it is said, it is simply not a priority for us relative to other investments. And as you see in this graph, there wasn't a big difference between the answers of small firms as well as of large firms. Lack of financial resources came as a very distant second. So this already tells us that there is lack of awareness among firms, and that there are information asymmetries, that energy efficiency can be actually good for business, good for the bottom line. If you ask firms about, why they undertake green investments, and this is still the same survey, essentially you see that it is due to customer pressure, or it is due to taxes that have been imposed by governments. Next, we were interested in what determines whether firms have green management policies, basically whether they think about green issues, energy efficiency, waste management, and so on in a systematic way. And what we have discovered is that among firms we surveyed, foreign affiliates were way ahead of domestic firms, even large firms in that respect, right? So this is the first reason why I think foreign direct investment can play a role in stimulating green transition. Now, you may ask me, have we seen this in the past, right? And, if you go back to the literature on green issues and multinationals, literature that was developed in the 1990s, there, the question we were interested in was exactly the opposite. Is FDI facilitating movement of polluting activities somewhere else? So now we should be looking for evidence of the opposite, right? If really FDI is going to be a force for good, we should have seen that foreign ownership is associated with improvements in environmental outcomes. Now, one way of asking this question is to look at the impact of foreign acquisitions and energy efficiency. As I mentioned earlier, improvements in energy efficiency are good for business because they are good for the bottom line for profits, and they are good for the environment. So this is a question I looked at with my co-authors, Arlan Bruckel and Ines Alav, in a paper we published in the Journal of International Economics a couple of years ago. Now, As a starting point, our hypothesis was that FDI, that foreign ownership, should be associated with greater energy efficiency for several reasons. First, foreign affiliates tend to operate at a larger scale, and the larger scale means that any fixed cost you need to incur in order to improve your energy performance, it's more worthwhile. Larger, more profitable firms are more likely to be able to afford the fixed cost. Also, multinationals tend to be at the technological frontier, so they will have access to more efficient technologies. They are more worried about their reputations. They may be under pressure of customers in their home markets. And of course, multinationals tend to be better managed. And we know that from many studies, including the work of Nick Bloom. So in this paper, we focused on data from Indonesia, namely Indonesian census of manufacturing. We looked at 20 years of data from the 80s and 90s. And the reason why we stopped in 2001 was because what made this data set different and special, namely information, very detailed information on energy inputs, was not available in such a detail after 2001. So Indonesian census of manufacturing is conducted at the plant level. It covers all plants with more than 20 employees. And as I mentioned, the census asks very detailed information about energy inputs used. So it distinguishes between petrol and diesel fuel, between liquefied gas, between kerosene, or even firewood and charcoal, not to mention, obviously, electricity. And it asks this information not only in terms of the amount spent on each type of energy source, but also in terms of physical units. And that means that for each plant, we are able to observe not just expenditure on energy, but we are able to convert these energy sources into British thermal units, so into a common unit, and we can use that as a proxy for energy efficiency when we scale it by output, for instance. Moreover, knowing the detailed information about energy input means that we can convert that into expected CO2 emissions, because the conversion factors are easily available. The census includes more than 300,000 plant year observations for more than 40 plants. Now here we focus on foreign acquisitions, meaning we look at cases when a plant that was in Indonesian hands changes owners and has at least 20% foreign ownership. Now, how do we what's the logic behind our empirical strategy? So what we do is we look at changes in output and energy uses in the plants that change ownership. But of course, you may be worried that plants that get selected for purchase by foreign firms are special. So we want to take that into account. And the logic of our approach is that for each plant that will become a future acquisition target, we find a twin, another plant that is very similar in observable characteristics, and that is also active in the same industry, narrowly defined industry, and it's observed in the same year. And the logic behind this approach is that those control plants give us the missing counterfactual. They tell us how the acquired plants would have behaved had they not changed ownership. So in the language of econometrics, what we are doing is we are combining propensity score matching with a difference in differences approach. Now, of course, our exercise will produce reasonable results only if our matching is good. Our matching is on 4 variables. So our control plants need to be as similar as possible in terms of size of their output, measured in real terms the year prior to acquisition, in terms of their energy intensity, as well as the same 2 variables 2 years prior of acquisitions. So the fact that we are matching on observations not only 1 year before ownership change, but also 2 years prior of the ownership change assures that there are no differences in pre-trends between these 2 samples. As you can see, when we compare our 210 treated plants to 210 controls, there is no difference in terms of these characteristics between the 2 groups. Now, of course, you may be worried about other characteristics. And here, the good news is that even if we look at energy use in terms of physical units, predicted CO2 emissions, employment, or whether or not a plant exports, share of skilled workers. So a host of these variables, including changes in many of these variables, there is no significant difference between the treated group and the control group. The one variable where we do most poorly is the share of imported inputs. Now, so what do we find? To quickly summarize it graphically, we find is that prior to acquisition, plants that will be acquired by foreign interest, as well as plants that are domestic and will remain domestic, they are on the same trajectory when you look at energy expenditure divided by output. But then already in the year where acquisition happens, something happens to acquired plants. They become more efficient. Energy expenditure over output dips, and it remains at this lower level, while domestic plants continue increasing their energy intensity. Now, we can do the same thing, but now instead of looking at expenditure on energy, we can measure energy use in millions of British thermal units. So that allows us to aggregate these multiple sources of energy. And when you do that relative to output, exactly the same picture emerges. Plants that become foreign become less energy intensive. The same thing happened if you look at predicted CO2 emissions. Now, how big are these magnitudes? Improvements are on the order of between 30 and 40%. And here you see the regression results. You see that all of the results, all of the coefficients are highly statistically significant. So the second message I want to leave you with is that foreign acquisitions lead to greater energy efficiency. Now, what are the channels? How is exactly this adjustment happening? The first thing we see in the data is the scale effects. Acquired plants massively increase output when they become acquired. Now, you may be wondering, why is the acquired effect already large in the year of acquisition? Remember, if acquisitions were to be distributed uniformly throughout the year, that would mean that already at that point, acquired plants spent half a year on average under foreign ownership. So you see increase in output. What you also see is that massive investment in new technologies. And this is reflected in, for instance, investment in machinery. So bringing machinery means bringing technology embodied in these new production lines. Big difference between acquired plants and the control group. This third, now, what you may be wondering about, is it that acquired plants change their production profile? You know, it could be that they shift towards more energy intensive products. So we wanted to understand that. And to do that, we brought in additional data that for a sub-period allows us to observe product mix at the 5-digit ISIC code level. So this is, these products are quite aggregated. We have this data for only a subset of the data. So here, subset of the time period. So we will be looking at a much shorter time period. And we focus on plants that did not change their product mix. So we measure the product mix using Herfindahl index, and plants that had, less than 5% change to their product mix are then matched with control plants that also did not change their product mix. And once you restrict the sample to those plants that are not changing their product portfolio, you see actually even slightly bigger effects. So what we are saying is that impact of foreign ownership is not due to changing the production profile. It seems to be due to changes in the production process. Now we do additional exercises based on the composition of products we control for the pre-acquisition predicted energy intensity, where the relevant energy intensity is predicted based on production technology in domestic plants. You don't see controlling for that does not have an impact on the core results. Finally, we can also control for output, so for scale effect, and again, the results go through. So that means that it's not only scale, it's not only change to the production process, it's the change to the product mix, it's actually change in production process. And this change in production process, together with the new technologies embodied in machinery, as well as scale effects, are the channels that are responsible for the impact of foreign ownership on energy efficiency, on increasing energy efficiency. Now, you may be interested in whether the energy mix changes, whether acquired plants start relying on different types of fuels once after the ownership change. And one way to look at it is to compare the size of the coefficients on energy intensity in general to electricity intensity, to the use of electricity per unit of output. Note that here we have two types of measure. One is based on expenditure, one is based on physical units. And note that here we also talk about net electricity usage, because some of these plants actually produce electricity. They have aggregators and they are actually, sometimes they even sell it. So we net that out. And what is quite apparent is that electricity usage changes less than total usage of energy input. So there is some reallocation. The reason why electricity usage does not go down as much as total fuel usage, it is due to the fact that electricity was quite cheap in Indonesia, cheap when compared to other countries in the region. So we think that impact of FDI on energy sensitivity or energy efficiency is sensitive to energy prices in a given country. Now, the next obvious question to ask is, what will happen when foreign owners leave? So is the impact of FDI visible only when foreign owners are running the plant? Or is it that they reshuffle the production structure, they reorganize things, and then once they leave, the same level of energy efficiency persists? Now, what are the reasons why the effect may go away after they leave? Well, the first reason may be that there is simply less pressure from foreign customers and from foreign headquarters to keep the same level of environmental friendliness. The second reason may be that, these firms may be losing scale because they may be losing export markets once they get cut off from the production network of the parent company. It also may be due to changes in management. Once multinational sells a foreign affiliate, they may withdraw expat managers, and the new management may have different priorities. And indeed, what you see in the data is that no matter what measure of energy efficiency you use, once divestment takes place, meaning once a foreign affiliate is sold to domestic interests, gains are reversed. Now, in order just to clarify what we are doing here, we are taking the population of foreign affiliates in Indonesia, and we are looking at foreign affiliates which are sold by their foreign parents to new Indonesian owners, and we compare those divested affiliates to foreign affiliates that continue being in foreign hands. So this is not exactly the same sample as the plants that switch from being domestic to foreign, right? Here, some of the plants we have in the data here may have started out as greenfield operations. But what is quite striking here is that once divestment takes place, once foreign owners are gone, energy intensity goes up, and there seems to be an effect that takes some time. Now, why could it be the case? And now I am going to bring in another paper joined with Stephen Polhecki, published in the Journal of European Economic Association, where we looked explicitly at the question of foreign divestments in Indonesia. We were interested in understanding in changes that take place once foreign owners leave. And here, what you see is a graph which is in levels, and you see here regression specification, which is in changes, but the message is the same. If you look at treated plants, so these are foreign affiliates that will lose foreign parents, and foreign affiliates that will continue having foreign parents, the trends are very similar prior to divestment taking place. But once divestment is there, divested plants, so plants ditched by their foreign parents, start behaving differently, and in particular, output goes down very much. They also register a big drop in productivity, here measured as total factor productivity. Why is that happening? One of the reasons why it's happening is they become cut off from the distribution networks, from the global value chains of their parent firm. And the way you can see it is they become much less much less export intensive. So basically the share of exports in their output drops dramatically, while there is no change for affiliates that remain in foreign hands. And they also start relying less on imported inputs. So basically they are kicked out from the parent company's global value chains. So the message here is that foreign divestments reverse those efficiency gains, those gains in energy efficiency. And that's very suggestive of, if you want the benefits of FDI in your country, it's not enough to have multinationals come in, reorganize things. It's actually important to keep them because there is some flow of knowledge of headquarters services to foreign affiliates. Now, so what does this all mean for policy, right? So if FDI, if multinationals can help you increase energy efficiency, how can you use policy to encourage inflows of multinationals into sectors that you would like to see develop? And the next part of my presentation is about investment promotion. And I am a great believer that investment promotion is one of those industrial policies that can be helpful if done right and have little downsides if they are done wrong. Because if you are not successful, you have not wasted many resources and you have not introduced distortions. But let me tell you first what I mean by investment promotion. Investment promotion is typically done by so-called investment promotion agencies, which strive to market the country as a good place of doing business. They get in touch with multinationals. They try to get them interested in investing in their country. They work with investors who've already committed to investment by helping them navigate the bureaucratic maze. Also, investment promotion agencies play a policy advocacy role. They served as an intermediary between the foreign investment community and the government. Now, by investment promotion, I do not mean fiscal incentives, subsidies, any other types of handouts. I actually personally believe that these handouts can be harmful and that most countries tend to overpay. So when I talk about investment promotion, I really focus on these core activities related to lowering information barriers and lowering the cost, the fixed cost of undertaking investment, the fixed cost of navigating the bureaucratic procedures. Now, in order to get at the effect of investment promotion efforts, it is helpful to know that investment promotion professionals believe that the best way of conduct their business is to engage in so-called sector targeting. So rather than trying to convince investor community that your country is a great place to do business in general, your message is more effective if you say, my country is a great place to do business in the food industry or in the IT industry or in the pharmaceutical industry. And that allows you to target the message better, to be more convincing, to focus on multinationals that are relevant to that message, and it tends to work better in practice. And actually, many countries, and here you see some statistics, pursue that strategy, and they tend to prioritize a variety of sectors in their efforts. Now, in my previous life, when I worked for the World Bank in mid-2000s, I actually had a team of 3 people who conducted census of investment promotion agencies. It took them a year to gather the information. But in particular, we were able to survey more than 100 countries. And we were very interested in collecting information on priority sectors in those countries. And so we gave each agency a list of sectors. We asked them which of these sectors is a priority for you. And if so, when did you start targeting that sector, when you stopped? And then in a subsequent work with Thorfinn Harding published in the EJ, we showed that targeting of a particular sectors more than doubles FDI inflows into that sector. And, you know, if you think that more than doubling is a lot, actually, you know, if you look at average sample, if you look at the sample of developing countries that received some FDI, the median sector level inflow was 11 million. That means that the doubling that we estimate in our sample, that brings additional 17 million of FDI, actually seems pretty reasonable. And in particular, we thought that our results passed the smell test because we found that investment promotion worked only in developing countries, and that it was more effective in countries where information asymmetries were more severe and where bureaucratic procedures were more burdensome. So now, with that information in the background, let me ask the question I wanted to ask. Can investment promotion be used as a policy lever to shape comparative advantage, to develop comparative advantage in sectors that you want to prioritize? So it's the same data on investment promotion activities. Now it's combined with four-digit product level data on trade flows. And what we do in this paper is we ask whether reveal index, so we look at export outcome, either an index of revealed comparative advantage or just value of exports pertaining to a particular product. So very detailed product information, you know, more than about 2,000 products. Product P exported from a particular country in a particular year. And we ask whether we see increase in exports if that product belongs to a sector that is a priority sector for investment promotion purposes in that country. And we take a lot of unobservables into account because we have product country fixed effects. So if that country is a good place to produce that product, that would be captured that. We capture development in global markets with product year fixed effects and general conditions in a country in that year with country year fixed effects. And what we find is that regardless whether we look at the index of revealed comparative advantage or just a volume of exports, there is a very strong positive relationship between investment promotion activities and exports. So this is suggestive that investment promotion activities bring FDI, which then develops exports in that sector, either directly or through spillovers, for instance, informational spillovers. Now, you may be worried about pre-trends, so we also conduct an event study. We find that exports, this is the wrong label, that exports target that products in sectors targeted by investment promotion agencies don't behave differently prior to targeting starting, and that event study also tells us that the impact of investment promotion efforts on exports is actually visible only 2 years after targeting starts. So if targeting start of that sector for investment promotion purposes starts at time T, the impact on exports is visible only in T+2 and T+3, which is reasonable. You would expect that there would be a delay between investment promotion efforts, FDI coming in, and then exports materializing. Now, you may be worried about whether countries or whether these investment promotion agencies choose for targeting sectors that are on some sort of virtuous trajectory, maybe sectors that would have exported more anyway. So we worry about this. Now, in the study, we go through a lot of other robustness checks arguing that that's not the case, but let me show you one of them. We asked a more nuanced question. So we estimate a more stringent specification by asking a more nuanced question. Does FDI promotion have a larger impact on exports of particular types of products within sectors? And we look in particular at products with greater capital intensity or products where inputs require more relationship-specific investment. So these are product-specific measures, and within each sector, we have products that are highly capital-intensive and products that are not. Similar for reliance on relationship-specific investments. In order to save time, I'm not going to describe these measures in detail. Now, the reason we do that is because focusing on interaction with a product characteristic allows us to control for sector, country, year fixed effects. And that means that we are taking into account heterogeneity or arbitrary shocks at the level of country, sector, time that may have led to a particular sector being chosen as a priority sector for investment promotion purposes. So when we do this, we find that it is true, our results still hold. So our more nuanced hypothesis finds support in the data. Because foreign affiliates tend to be more capital intensive than domestic firms, it is reasonable to expect that investment promotion would have a greater impact on exports of more capital intensive products. And that's indeed what we find here. And here, this controlling for this sector, country, year heterogeneity gives us confidence that we don't have to worry about how these sectors were chosen for targeting. Now, final part of my talk, let me try to convince you that investment promotion can also be used as a tool for stimulating innovation. This is work with Mariana Spattarano. It's still very recent work. We use the same approach as in the previous paper. We look at country, sector, time varying information on FDI promotion efforts. We do differences in differences. But now the outcome of interest is patent applications or patents granted. Now, but it's not just any patents. You know, we worry about the fact that different patent offices may apply different standards. So therefore, in our baseline analysis, we focus just on patents filed in the US PTO, but we focus on patents that are filed by entities from the country that is engaged in investment promotion, and patents that involve at least one inventor from that country. So patent applications are a beautiful source of data because they tell you the location of the entity that is filing for the patent, but also the location of all inventors. So here we require that at least one inventor is located in that country. And when you do this analysis, you find that sectors targeted by investment promotion agencies see an increase in patenting. Now, if you do an event study, you see that there is no evidence of pre-trends, and that the effect kicks in only 2 years after investment promotion shock takes place. And here we use the same trick as in the previous study in order to take into account all these unobservables that may drive choice of particular sectors for investment promotion efforts. We ask whether the impact of FDI promotion is greater on industries which have higher R&D intensity. So here, multiple industries belong to the same targeted or non-targeted sectors, right? And that allows us to take into account this country, sector, year specific heterogeneity. And when we do it, our effects go through. But now the effect is much more delayed, which is actually much more believable, because you would expect that there should be a delay between investment promotion efforts, FDI taking place, and the patent application being filed. And the magnitudes are quite reasonable. If you look at, compare industries at the 25th percentile of distribution of R&D to those at the 75th percentile, impact of investment promotion increases from almost 6 to 19%, and that translates into 2 additional patent applications. So, you know, these are not hundreds or not even dozens of patent applications, but, you know, even patent applications are a pretty rare occurrence. So the fact that these results speak of 2 additional applications seem very reasonable. So to conclude, I've tried to convince you that firms in emerging markets may not be willing to undertake green investments unless they are nudged by their customers or by regulation, and that FDI can be a force for good. It can help facilitate green transition, and that's because foreign affiliates are more energy efficient. And here I've tried to convince you that there is a causal relationship between ownership change and energy efficiency. And that has implication for policies, because countries can use targeting of their investment promotion efforts to shape the structure of their economy, of their exports, and to stimulate green transition. So let me stop here, and we'll be happy to answer any questions